Hi, I'm Eric Verschen, Media Technologies Evangelist. In this video, you'll learn all about video playback in iOS, how to handle remote control events, and a brief introduction to AV Foundation, essential knowledge for incorporating video in your iOS app. This talk is going to get you started on video if you're new to it. It's going to get you to add functionality if you're already using video in your app. And it's going to introduce you to some of the more advanced APIs. You're going to learn how to do basic movie playback and recording. You're going to learn about notifications, remote control, AV output, and a brief introduction to AV Foundation. So let's look at the technology frameworks that we're going to be talking about here. There's three frameworks in particular. The first one is the Media Player Framework. The Media Player Framework is responsible for simple, basic movie playback, as well as playing back of songs that you might have in your iPod app. Now, we're not going to talk about playing back songs. We're just going to talk about the movie playback. Now, underneath the Media Player Framework is the UIKit framework. The UIKit framework is a very large framework and has to do with everything that presents UI in iOS. A small portion of UIKit has to do with presenting media, and I'll be talking about those classes in this talk. Underneath that, at a level below, is AV Foundation. AV Foundation is another very large framework. It was introduced in iOS 4.0, and it's what you need to use if you're going to do more advanced things with video. In the diagram, you'll see that I've mentioned several other frameworks below AV Foundation: Core Audio, Core Media, Core Animation. I won't be talking in detail about those frameworks, but I wanted to give you a sense that AV Foundation is built on a lot of other technologies. So these three frameworks on the top, Media Player, UIKit, and AV Foundation, is what we're going to talk about. First, let's talk about playback. Basic movie playback is when you're taking over the entire screen to play back your movie. And in this case, you're going to be using Media Player Framework. The first class you want to know about is MP Movie Player View Controller. MP Movie Player View Controller is what you're going to use if you're going to do simple movie playback, where you want to take over the entire screen of your iOS device. Now, MP Movie Player View Controller is a UI view controller, and you use it modally. That is, it's going to be the only thing interacting on your iOS device. But rather than using the standard present and dismiss methods, you have to use special methods that are customized for UI view controller. Now, this is going to use the entire screen. So what you're going to do is you're going to add a method to your UI view controller subclass. This method would be called something like play movie at URL. You'll pass it a URL of the content that you want to play. Obviously, the first thing you're going to do is you need to allocate that MP Movie Player View Controller and knit it with your content. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to register for the playback finish notification. Now, one of the things you want to notice here is that the object you're going to get notifications on is not your view controller. Instead, it's the movie player that's associated with the view controller. And the notification you're going to register for is MP Movie Player Playback Did Finish notification. And this is what you're going to get when your movie stops playing. Now, once you've done that, you simply tell the view controller to present the movie player view controller. You're calling that method, which goes ahead and has this new view controller take over the screen. And then at that point, all you do is initiate movie playback. Now, notice that this is asynchronous. The movie doesn't start playing immediately, but the method does return immediately. Now, the other piece of code that you need to create is the method that's going to be called by that notification. In this case, I've called it MyMovieFinished Callback. Now, it's going to get a notification object like any notification, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the notification that I created. And notice that in this case, what I'm getting back as an object is not the view controller, but is instead the movie player that's associated with that view controller. Once I've gotten rid of the notification, I dismiss the modal view and then release the instance. Now, The other class that we're going to be interested in is MP Movie Player Controller. MP Movie Player Controller is what I use when I want to only take over part of the screen of my iOS device. Now, in this case, rather than being a view controller, it has a view property associated with it. And that means we need to install this view into our view hierarchy, and the frame of that view needs to match the bounds of its parent view. So let's look at the method we're going to create. Again, let's call it something like play movie at URL. Now, the beginning here, I'm going to do very similar things. I'm going to go and create my MP Movie Player Controller. I'm going to save it away somewhere in my class. I'm going to set the content to be the URL that I'm interested in. And then the important piece that I've highlighted here is I'm going to add the view that's associated with that movie player controller into the view hierarchy that already exists. And I want to make sure that the frame of that view matches the bounds of its parent view. Once I've done that, it's in my view hierarchy, and all I have to do is play the movie once again. So that's our two classes that exist in Media Player. MP Movie Player View Controller. It's a view controller. You use it modally and it takes over the whole screen. And MP Movie Player Controller instead has a view property. You install it in your view hierarchy and make sure that the bounds match. Now, one thing I want to mention is prior to iOS 3.2, MP Movie Player Controller worked differently. In that case, it took over the whole screen, and the modal playback wasn't presented with a special method. Instead, it happened automatically when you played and was dismissed automatically when the movie finished. Now, the only reason I mention this is if you have to port some code that's pre 3.2, or if you feel you need, for some reason, to still support users who are on iOS 3.1 or earlier. This behavior is deprecated and doesn't occur in newer versions of the OS. Now I'd like to turn to what you can do in terms of enhancing your support for movies. I'm going to talk about 5 different things here. What you can do with your user interface in terms of customization, the various notifications that exist around movies, how to handle remote control events, how you can get video output from iOS, and about AirPlay. So let's talk about user interface. Now, when I'm playing a video, say with MP Movie Player View Controller, it's in an embedded view, and I have a very limited set of controls: a play-pause button, the AirPlay button, and a button that allows me to go in full screen. Now, once I go into full screen, I have a lot more controls. I have a volume slider, a next fast forward button, a previous rewind button, done button, the scrubber bar and playhead, and a button that allows me to change the scaling of the video. Now, for certain kinds of media, file-based media, I have a few other controls that will show up. There's a control for subtitle and alternate audio menu, and a control that shows the chapter list menu. In terms of customizing the UI for movie playback, really your only choice is to turn off the controls. You do that with the MP Movie Control Style None. Now you can resynthesize most of the controls. The exceptions are the AirPlay control, the subtitle and alternate audio button, and the chapter list. It is possible to get AirPlay by using the MP Volume View class. This gives you a volume slider and an AirPlay button. Using the MP Volume View is pretty straightforward. You allocate the class associating with the particular parent view's bounds and add it as a subview. Now I'd like to turn to the various notifications that are associated with movies. There are quite a number of notifications, so I've broken them into several groups. The first group I'd like to talk about is those that are associated directly with movie playback. The first one you've seen before, MP Movie Player Playback Did Finish notification. That's a notification you get when your movie's done. The other ones here have to do with notifications that you'd like to get when some part of your app isn't directly involved with movie playback. For instance, if you want to use the same movie player to play multiple different URLs, that is, different content, you can have part of your app register for the Now Playing Movie Did Change notification. That part of your app will get this notification when you change the URL that's associated. The next group of notifications I'd like to talk about all have to do with the movie content. The first four have to do with values that are associated with a movie that aren't necessarily available when you first initialize your movie. For instance, the system may not know exactly the duration of your movie when you initialize the object. If some part of your application needs to know these values exactly, you should register for one of these notifications so that you can find out once the system knows. The next two notifications here have to do with things that can change, that are part of the presentation state of the movie. For instance, scaling mode did changed. If the user is allowed to change the scaling of the movie, that is, what the aspect ratio is of the movie as it's going along, your application will get notified with a scaling mode did change notification. The last one in this group is the time to metadata updated notification. Now, this notification only occurs on HTTP live streams. Time metadata is metadata that's associated with particular points in time in the movie, say 35 seconds in or 42 seconds in. The time metadata is sent as a notification because this makes it easier for your application to react to that metadata. The next group of notifications all have to do with going into and out of full screen. Now, this is a very typical pattern in iOS. You get will enter, did enter, will exit, did exit. And these should be quite familiar from other parts of the system. The last notification I want to talk about is the thumbnail image request did finish notification. You use this notification when you wanted to get a still image for one or more frames in your movie. These things have to be done asynchronously by the system on your behalf. So the system's going to send you a notification when those thumbnails are completed.